Good morning. It's Benjamin Sanchez, and I'm here with another edition of Coffee with Law. Today, I want to talk about what you should do if a debt collector contacts you regarding an old debt. Now, throughout my career, I've been asked about this many times by people who believe that a debt has gone away, only to have a debt collector come back years later and start asking about the debt and trying to collect the debt. And in the explanation on this video, I told you that the answer to this question is not so simple. Why is that? I'll explain in this video. In Texas, a debt can be sued upon for 4 years after the default. The problem is that most people think that a debt goes away after 4 years in Texas, and that is not the case. A debt stays alive forever. So once you don't pay money, it stays alive unless you go to bankruptcy. And I'm not here to talk about bankruptcy. So assuming that we're not talking about bankruptcy, a debt stays alive forever. However, the ability to sue on the debt goes away in Texas after 4 years. Every state is different. Some states have longer limitations period, which is the amount of time that a creditor can sue on the debt. In Texas, it's 4 years. Now, there's some debate, depending upon the type of debt and the attorneys arguing, as to whether or not that 4 years begins on the date that you last made your payment, the last payment you made, whether that date is on the date of the last purchase that you made, or the date is the charge-off date that most credit card companies do, which is usually 6 months after the last payment. Quite frankly, if your last payment was in, let's say, March, but you were still able to keep charging through June, it would make sense that the 4 years would start at least in June. So depending upon how old the debt is, if it's more than 4 years, you may not want to do anything. You may simply want to ignore it. What I propose to clients is this, is that either you ignore it or you send the creditor or debt collector something in writing via certified mail so that you have proof that you sent it, that tells them to only contact you by mail. Under federal law, if you do that, then the debt collection agency can no longer call you on the phone. And at the very least, you stop the interruptions of your day at home, at work sometimes, and or them calling other people. Tomorrow, I'll go over what rights debt collectors have to bother other people in your world about you and your debt. But at least for today's purposes, if you send them a letter in writing, then they can no longer call you. Then they can only send you something in writing from that point on. Here's the big takeaway for today, though, that there are some circumstances in which a debt that is too old to be sued upon can be revived for purposes of a lawsuit if you make a payment and you acknowledge the debt. So, for example, some debt collection agencies will get to you on a debt that's maybe 5 or 6 years old, and they'll say, hey, let's just enter into a payment plan. Or, hey, I need to get a payment today, right? And so the debtor feels nervous and they're threatened with all sorts of things that are illegal, and they'll end up making a payment, or they'll enter into a written settlement agreement that says they'll pay off the debt and then they'll make the first payment. If something like that happens, then the debt is considered revived for purposes of being able to sue. And at that point, the creditor or debt buyer can then sue on the debt again. So it's very important that you do not acknowledge the debt and make a payment on the debt. You can tell them, don't bother me, don't call me, only write to me. But I would not acknowledge the debt and definitely not make a payment on the debt. If you're unsure about these things, you can go to an attorney who can pretty much do a simple review with you on a consultation and look at the debt, look at the letter, if there is one from the debt collection agency, or talk to you about the phone calls you've been getting. Most of the time, debt collection agencies will honor your written letter that says, do not call me. Sometimes, though, you need to get an attorney involved to let the debt collection agency know you're serious. So the most important thing you could do on an old debt is to tell them in writing via certified mail to only contact you by mail and to not call you. And 2, do not make a payment or acknowledge the debt. If you just do those things, your life will be so much easier and you won't have these incoming phone calls on a daily or regular basis. And at least you'll get some relief from the constant pressures of these collectors calling you. I hope that's been helpful. Again, my name is Benjamin Sanchez. I've been doing this for 22 years. If you have any issues, please feel free to look me up. Have a great day, and we'll continue our series tomorrow on debt collection. Bye-bye.